Hello, my name is Ben Atkinson and I'm currently designing a robotically actuated exoskeleton for my mechanical engineering capstone. I would just like to start by thanking Michael Behrens and Martin Doe for their guidance and support throughout this semester. Without you guys, this wouldn't have been possible. Approximately 500,000 Australians are currently living with disabilities after having suffered from a stroke. Unfortunately, 37% of these survivors are unable to perform their everyday activities without external assistance. Last year, this led to a total of 39.7 million hours of care being invested from informal carers alone. As such, occupational therapists frequently generate and implement exercises to exploit the brain's neuroplasticity and recover lost motor function. Sadly, this process is very time-consuming, as patients frequently require intense treatment to maintain the best chances of recovery. In an effort to relieve some of this burden from occupational therapists, engineers have begun investing resources into exoskeleton and end effector solutions. UTS Rapido previously developed a proof-of-concept hand exoskeleton, but although this design proved to be a promising solution, it had a number of flaws which ultimately rendered it unfit for use in clinical trials. One of these issues was the complexity due to the high part count. As an exoskeleton often needs to be tailored to suit a specific individual, a higher part count leads to longer design, manufacture, and assembly times. The pre-existing design also suffered from durability issues due to the pins in the pin joints dislodging themselves over time. The most prominent issue, though, is the limited range of motion. The proof-of-concept design incorporated a kinematic structure comprised of numerous rigid links connected via revolute joints, which was only capable of 80 degrees of rotation and flexion. This project aimed to solve these issues by redesigning the entire exoskeleton and substituting the rigid links and pin joints with compliant mechanisms. Compliant mechanisms are constructed from flexible members that are designed to bend to transfer force, energy, and motion. The most notable advantages of compliant mechanisms for this project are its superior durability due to the elimination of pin joints, which tend to become dislodged and wear over time, the continuous geometry, which reduces the part count from 14 parts to just 1 per finger, the superior range of motion that results from the less restrictive design method and the elimination of collisions between parts, as there is only one, and finally, their ability to be compressed and extended, which is extremely useful as the length of the top of the finger extends and as it bends due to the location of the finger's anatomical axes. During this project, there were two main challenges. The first was designing a wrist brace that each of the other components would mount to. The previous design was developed by taking approximate measurements of the hand and forearm before manually constructing a model. In order to improve the fit and comfort, I decided to utilize 3D scanning technology to capture the geometric proportions of my hand and forearm and develop a model directly from that data. My early attempts aimed to utilize a number of the native CAD functions to do this, but the presence of these lulled me into believing this task would be much simpler than it really was. After countless hours, problems such as surface wrinkles and program computational limits meant I was unable to convert these surfaces derived from the scan into solid bodies. I then learned to use a new program which was better optimized to deal with designing organic shaped parts. This was successful, but once I tried re-importing it into CAD software, I discovered that the part wasn't able to be edited, which rendered it useless. Eventually, by employing a number of workarounds, I was able to finally develop a solution which can be seen in the last image. Fortunately, unlike the first challenge, my second significant challenge was one that I hadn't anticipated. This was the compliant mechanism design. After developing an initial design, I utilized an iterative trial and error approach through prototyping to fine-tune the mechanism. Upon completion of my initial compliant mechanism prototype, I was disappointed to discover that, in contrast to what my research had led me to believe, this design was a long way from optimal. In fact, it took 22 prototypes for just one finger before I finally ran out of ways to design it wrong. Initial tests indicate that over the course of these iterations, the mechanism's range of motion increased from 83 degrees, which is approximately the same as the previous design, to between 225 degrees and 260 degrees, depending on the boundary conditions. As well as addressing other issues over the course of these iterations, the range of motion alone improved more than 270%. During these iterations, there was one particular breakthrough that led to the most significant improvement in the compliant mechanism's range of motion. This breakthrough was made over 2 different prototype iterations. During these iterations, I discovered how vital this point highlighted in the image was. In the early stage of the prototyping phase, I realized that shifting the top of this S-shaped member to the opposite side of the top flexure dramatically increased the mechanism's range of motion. Despite this, it wasn't until later on in the prototyping phase, after having seemingly reached a dead end, that I realized why. By analyzing the earlier prototypes, I realized that the obvious reason for the early improvement was because I had generated a small moment arm that the rigid beam could pivot around. By applying this discovery to the next prototype, I was able to increase the moment arm and drastically improve the results. So how does this project meet the criteria for the award? In terms of how this project demonstrated invention, after evaluating the existing design, I was able to address its flaws by introducing innovative design techniques such as 3D scanning and compliant mechanism utilization. These features enabled me to vastly improve upon the existing design in a variety of aspects. For commercialization, whilst there's still work to be done before this product could be commercialized, there's a market for robotically actuated systems such as this to reduce the burden on occupational therapists. By dramatically reducing the number of parts and optimizing each part for 3D printing on a cheap FDM-style printer, this makes manufacturing very cheap relative to most existing alternatives. Relating to invention, I haven't really invented something new per se because robotically actuated exoskeletons and compliant mechanisms already exist. There's even a pre-existing design that's also an amalgamation of these 2 concepts. However, the compliant mechanism in that instance was very basic and served a different use case, so I would claim that this product is unique and inventive in its own way. For future work, whilst there are a number of avenues that could be delved into deeper, there are 2 main areas that this design would benefit from most. One of those would be to design a software package that automates the design process by measuring the hand's geometric proportions through scan data. The second would be the development of a sensory system to control the exoskeleton. Techniques used to do this could include the analysis of electrical signals in the forearm's muscles through electromyography techniques, or a system that performs mirror therapy by utilizing a sensory glove on the patient's unimpaired hand. The latter of these options has actually already been planned for a future capstone. That concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.